Okay, so like let's talk about pricing myths. Like do you think, Ben, some ways that people in the industry think they can price and they're sorely like potentially mistaken?
I think that screen printers I think I mentioned that I watched the one of the Mark is it Kudre? Is that how you pronounce it? I watched one of those videos with him, and that was actually that one really got my mind stirring a lot, because he talked about how your 12-piece price tier, for instance, and that's usually the guilty party is your 12-piece price tier, when it's so high that when a customer orders 22 shirts, it actually is cheaper. It costs them less money. Like, let's just say that 22 shirts is going to cost them $400. But then once they jump to 24, that price drops down to like $350. That was what he was talking about. That our pricing
price breaks.
How
the tiers,
where price breaks are killing you. I think it's actually, I think that the great disservice that the majority of the screen printers I've been around in the industry have done is where they take where they don't look at what their cost is and base their price tiers on their cost. So if you know how much it costs you to produce this, you always have to make more than it cost. So it's okay if you get to that 22-piece price tier and convince your customer to order 24 and the price goes down a little bit, because you're still making the margin you needed to make, because you've figured out what your pricing is and how to profit by selling a 24-piece order.
But you bring up a good point, though. Like, is that a smart idea? I mean, it seems like, why give it to them less if they're willing to pay? Or are you saying that you got them to 24 because we can like sell you on a lower price per shirt, right? Because Mark's point was that it's silly to be able to do that, right? Why do more work, print a couple more shirts for less per piece and making just slightly less on the total? But you have a really great point, though, right? Of like, just focus on profitability and it doesn't necessarily matter.
Well, that's always going to be there, right? Like when you go to a restaurant and they have a special on something, like why would they tell you what that special is if they could sell you something that you probably wanted equally as much for more money? Why would they tell you that there's a special where you can buy? I mean, I had Schlotsky's Deli for lunch and I got a buy one, get one free pizza. I ate an entire pizza myself and someone else ate the other entire pizza by themselves. But they could have not told me about that, and I could have just had to split that pizza with somebody else.
There's a reason they did that. There's something,
Right. So what would be my reason to do that? What would be your reason to sell a customer 24 shirts instead of 22 and give them a better price point overall? My reason to do that would be customer retention and loyalty. I don't need to make an extra $50 on a person one time. I need to make $50 every other week on that person for the duration of their t-shirt ordering process.
So what you're
like.
thinking of, Ben, is like the lifetime value of a customer versus like the one-time experience, right? Like if they're bargain shopping customers, technically speaking, 23 shirts will make you more than selling 24. But if you're trying to incentivize long-term loyalty, I guess the question is there a better way to price with quantity discounts so you don't feel like you're hurting yourself by offering? Like, do you feel like some people give away too much when they give quantity breaks?
I think a lot of people do, but I think those people have no idea what it costs to make a shirt.
Right.
And I think if your pricing is based on what it costs, and those tiers are based on what it actually costs. So when we factored all that in, the 12, like there's a bottom line that we need to make that's where the screen cost comes into play, right? Like that's my bottom line. I have to cover the cost of making those screens and the ink that I'm going to use on that project. If I've already covered that.
Yeah, it's almost like there is a threshold where at some point profitability is made on the screens and some point profitability doesn't matter as much on the screens because the volume is so high, right? So when you order a ton from a contract printer, they might say there's no screen fees because your volume's so much greater that those screen fees are nominal. It's almost like if your screen fees are such a large percentage of your total sale, you could be crippling yourself I think that's where we say like we're not screen printers, we're screen makers.
Right.
But I wonder what that threshold is where, you know, for every shirt you add, technically your screen fee goes down, but your screen fees are generally still fixed because like whether you're printing 100 shirts or 6 shirts, 6 screens or 6 screens, you know. So,
well, and here's an interesting thing to that. To in contrary, and I think Mark's thought was actually really great, but I just had to rationalize it. I had to come to terms with where we were in that, and so I mean, it was a great point. But on the flip side of that, let's talk about what it looks like for a customer that has met that 36-piece price point, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they order 38 shirts, and let's just say that our screen charge has now been averaged into the cost of these shirts at 36. And let's just say that at 36 we determined that, I don't know, let's just say our screen cost is 15 up. Do you guys still have calculators? I have an actual calculator.
That's awesome.
Is that the TI-89?
Is that the Casio?
It's the TX 220 TS. This has been out on my desk since I've worked here.
You spell funny words?
Yeah, I think so.
You spell funny words and put it upside down. Hello.
Yeah.
Go on. What were you saying? This is good. This is good stuff.
If your let's just say our screen charge on this order is, let's say there's 2 screens on this, and we're going to charge $25 per screen for that, right? Mm-hmm. Like that seems to be a normal price that people charge for screens. So we've got $50 worth of screens on here, and then we're going to divide that into those 36 shirts, right? So that means that for every shirt that we sold, we are charging $1.39 for the screen service exclusively, right? So $1.39. Well, what happens if that customer orders 40 shirts instead of 36? Well, now we have 4 shirts where we get that $1.39, right? Mm-hmm. Then we have 4 more shirts that we're charging that $1.39 on, and so we actually it's a tiny amount of money, but we just got like $5.50 that didn't need to be got to cover those screen charges. When you separate out those screen charges, then they're fixed. But now that customer ordered 4 extra shirts, and and it's a small amount of money, but it adds up. So there is the argument to that on that side of it. If you're all inclusive and you've fixed that stuff into your pricing, the time that was spent on all of that was spent, and those 4 extra shirts are just a couple of extra dollars. It's 1 more biscuit when you have your morning meeting, or 2 more biscuits when you're having that morning meeting and trying to ramp up your production team's excitement about what the forms you're going to make them fill out and process.